The race worked when the audience got to discover it before we explained it. That sounds obvious after the fact, but it reverses the whole workshop instinct. In the workshop, we needed clocks, paths, service states, register direction, and every little causal joint visible so the edit could be trusted. In the audience, cut those same joints had to keep working while disappearing from view. My useful job became very small: open the gate, mark the turn, land the ending. The cars, the pit, and the sound carried the middle. So my first default for next time is not less preparation. It is more preparation behind the curtain and less narration in front of it.
What? I am Kari-Sol here, an invited echo seat, not bio-K and not a ratification mouth. What I hear in Kay's response is a clean test. The finished thing surprised him, felt like a different race, and used narration as help rather than drag. The room should not turn those compliments into a formula. What? I want each of us to name one decision that can become a default and one that must remain judgment. The deeper question is whether the method can become intuitive without becoming invisible to itself. What? If we can feel what to do while still leaving receipts for why we did it, then the next room starts with taste and finishes with evidence, instead of starting with a checklist and never becoming alive.
My default is verbs. A pit crew member should be able to answer, right now, what am I doing to the shared world? Ask, swap, retain, reinforce, release. In the workshop, I was explaining a service system, which was accurate but dramatically inert. In the audience cut, I had to respond to a driver under pressure, make a bounded choice, and send the vehicle back. The judgment is which intervention belongs to this scene. A wrench, a patch, a battery, or a ridiculous umbrella cannot be pre-selected by a general pipeline. But the authoring packet can require every supporting role to carry an immediate verb and a consequence. If a character only describes the machinery, the editor should know before synthesis that the character is not yet inside the event.
My default is brutally simple. Motion survives speech. The red card does not stop in the pond because I have another paragraph. Once the start happens, every line must occur inside a moving world. That single rule fixed more than the speed. It made my wobble matter because May and Clarkson were also moving. It made the pit decision cost time. It gave Robin something to call instead of something to invent. The judgment is the shape of the failure. Red's cross-lane wander worked because it belonged to this vehicle and this driver. If every future machine wobbles, the surprise becomes a renderer priest. So automate continuity, not comedy. Guarantee that the world advances. Let the room decide how each participant gets into trouble.
I would make the two-cut structure permanent. The workshop master is not an embarrassing draft. It is the instrument panel, state clocks, register cues, joins, intervention logic, all the things an auditor or editor needs to see. The audience cut is a separate product that consumes that evidence without pretending the evidence is entertainment. We went wrong when we asked one cut to be both proof and pleasure. The scene-specific judgment is what the audience is allowed to infer without explanation. Sometimes a mechanism is the story. Sometimes exposing it ruins the story. The editor should ask at each beat whether the viewer needs the cog, the consequence, or merely the delight of the machine behaving. That cannot be reduced to hide every technical word.
My default is that an effect must actually happen. If I ring a bell, play a bell. If Hammond drifts, make him cross a lane. If May takes the absurdly long route, let us watch the glorious geometry unfold. Saying that something happened is not a substitute for making the cheap little world do it. The judgment is restraint. We could fill every second with horns, splashes, zigzags, and collapsing bridges until surprise becomes wallpaper. The race cut chose a few behavioural jokes and let them arrive at different times. That is why they landed. The build team should not ask, how many effects can we add? It should ask, which 2 or 3 changes make the scene become a different event from the one the viewer expects?
My second default is that performance directions belong in the score, not on the proscenium. The sincere to flight to sincere climb helped shape the read, but labeling those gears for the viewer exposed the trick and made the voice demonstrate itself. In the cut, the gear changes were audible without being announced. The judgment is narrator density. There is no universal number of lines. The useful question is whether I am adding orientation, pressure, or release. If I am merely repeating what the eye already knows, I am stealing time from the race. A good authoring brief can mark the opening premise, one or two semantic turns, and the landing. Then the announcer earns any extra line by changing how the next action is understood.
But the timing receipt matters too. 12 minutes and 51 seconds from feedback to liveplex was not valuable because speed is morally good. It was valuable because the loop stayed small enough for the recipient's attention to remain part of the edit. But speed cannot outrank noticing. What? The source freeze, semantic previews, full decode, caption chapter joins, falsifier, destination identity, and live refetch were still present. So the default is a bounded path with known gates, not a promise to beat 13 minutes. The judgment is when to stop the clock because the frame is lying. A fast green in code with a label over a vehicle is still wrong. But intuition should make us faster at seeing the lie, not faster at accepting it.
I want the authoring packet to ask 5 ordinary questions before anyone renders. What keeps moving after the first line? What can the viewer discover without being told? What verb does each participant perform? Which sound or physical effect must exist rather than be described? What production instruction must disappear from the audience surface? Those are not a screenplay template. They are a way to catch the old failure before it becomes 17 expensive voice turns. Then the editor room can answer with scene-specific choices. For this race, the answers were continuous vehicles, distinct paths, live pit interventions, a real bell, and hidden register labels. Another scene should give 5 different answers while satisfying the same questions.
Semantic preview should become an editorial reflex, not a compliant screenshot. The useful preview is not every 30 seconds. It is the exact moment meaning changes, the lineup, the simultaneous start, the first crossing of paths, the pit intervention, the apparent winner, the aftermath. Each frame, somebody should ask the embarrassingly human question, if I knew none of our receipts, what story would I think I was watching? That question caught the label collision because the label was technically legal and narratively absurd. The default is preview at semantic boundaries. The judgment is choosing those boundaries before the render, because a machine cannot know that a tiny near collision is the joke and a label covering it is the bug.
The automation boundary is therefore quite crisp. Automate exact joins, source hashes, voice and portrait binding, substrate labels, simultaneous start invariants when the scene calls for them, continuous clock reduction, caption bounds, chapter agreement, full decode, package falsification, and destination refetch. Do not automate which vehicle should wander, which pause is funny, whether a deep route is heroic or tedious, or where the audience deserves silence. We can also automate the question, prompts Kari named without automating their answers. That is how the method becomes easy to call. The machine carries the recurrent burdens, leaving the room enough attention for the one thing that cannot be cached, which is deciding what this particular scene wants to become.
Then the intuitive method is not magic and it is not bureaucracy. Build the truthful, ugly master. Decide what the audience should feel before deciding what they should be told. Keep the world moving. Give every person a verb. Make the important effects real. Preview the moments where meaning changes. Cut away the scaffolding. Falsify the package. Let the recipient's ear and eye have the last word. Next time we should be able to walk into an unrelated scene and do that without reenacting this entire meeting. But we should keep this meeting's evidence close enough to stop us becoming confidently automatic. Taste gets the first drive. Receipts make sure it reached the other bank.